Hi everyone, this is the second video in my embeds series and I will probably end up making this a playlist. When I started off I thought I could just do a 2 or 3 part series, but it looks like there's a lot more involved once I start thinking about things and thinking about this technique and that technique and other things I might want to show. So we're starting off with, this is the second episode, and we're working on dry brushing using mica to dry brush into a mold, and we'll also do one where I'm dry brushing onto the soap itself. You can, as I just said up in the text, you can make a little paste sort of, or a paint texture by adding rubbing alcohol and painting on with it that way. I have done both and I like both, but I prefer dry brushing on soaps where I want to kind of blend a little bit. I feel like it gives me a little bit more control there. When I'm doing more fine lines and very intricate details, then I prefer using the alcohol method. So I'm basically just creating a rainbow with these mermaid tails. You can do whatever colors you like. In the ending pictures, you'll see some that I've done in the past, a variety of different styles and takes on it. This one, because it is rainbow, I'm doing basically painting the whole tail. And I'm painting that with dry mica, and I will come back and be sure to shake it out. I don't know if I showed it in the video, but I do typically dry brush a little bit of it with a clean brush to make sure there's not a lot of extra or excess in there, because you're putting this directly into hot soap. That's the embed portion of this, and you don't want a lot of loose mica floating around if you're going for a clear look, which I am in this. So that is one of my tips for that. The other is you can also brush it off after you bring it out of the mold. So that's another approach to that, in a way to make sure there's not too much, but be careful with it, because you obviously don't want to scratch through the bottom and reveal the base. The base is another interesting conversation, and we'll talk a little more about that later, but there are a variety of colors you can use when you're painting the whole thing. One of my other techniques is I paint part of it, and in the ending you'll see some soaps I've done that with, where I paint just the tail, put a little bit of detailed color on the tips of the tail, and brush some texture along the sides of the body where the scales are, and kind of bring out the scales or kind of highlight them, and then pour with a contrasting color. And that way you get an interesting and different results. You can also take these same embeds and not brush mica on at all. You can just pour them as a solid color. You can swirl colors if you pour at a low enough temperature, which is really something fun to do, and I haven't done in a while, but I may try that soon. Do some swirled embeds. Last time I'm pretty sure the embed video I did was some basic easy embeds that you can do by chopping and creating little chunks and crystals and shredding soap, that type of thing, just to create confetti looks. But we're now moving on to shapes, shaped molds. I always prefer silicone molds for this, and well, really for everything. The plastic molds are they're really difficult to work with, in my opinion. I have used them, and I will on occasion, but if it's something I'm making over and over again, or if it's really delicate and intricate, I'm not going to do it. You'll see why in the next video, when I'm showing how I remove some of the more intricate shapes, like the ones you see up above the mermaid I'm working on. I don't deal with those in this video. They're just there because I filmed a lot of it at the same time, but I do show ways to get those out cleanly and not break the little spider legs or the little branches. And the reason I brought that great big mermaid mold in there in the picture We have a kitty in the video. Sorry. just his little voice. But the reason I brought the large mermaid in is to show and remind you to check your sizes before you order anything. I ordered one thinking it was the same size as the little ones that I have there that were my first ones I bought, and it was so big. And it did work out to be a great use for the ones that I create in a loaf mold, which you will again see at the end. And the technique for creating them and painting them is exactly the same, just depending on how much colorant you want. And you see now that I'm pouring with the activated charcoal soap in there, and you'll see the differences that you can get in changing the color of the base. There's so many different looks you can get, and it really changes the effect. I like it for the rainbow. I like the black, and I also like it on white. It depends on what I'm doing with it and what the style or the feel is I want. You'll see at the end a side by side with a rainbow on white and a rainbow on black. And they're just, I mean, as you can imagine, one is darker and the other one's very light. What I like about the darker version is that to me it shows up as more metallic, and the metallic quality of the micas comes through a little bit better than on the white. And the white gives you brighter colors. So again, all depends on the look you're going for. And so here's the technique of just painting right on to the soap. I find, and this could just be all in my head, but I find that it seems to stay on the embeds a little longer and hold on to a little better, even though it's being embedded. So if you embed carefully, it doesn't matter that much. But I feel like the mica sticks better to the embeds. If you have the tail hanging out, which I do in the loaf style mermaid soaps that I do, the top part of the tail is sticking out. And so you want that mica to last as long as possible. And I feel like it lasts. It could, like I said, could be my imagination. You all, if you have done mica painting onto soap, you let me know what you feel about pouring the soap first and then painting it, or painting it in the mold, which is a little trickier, and then pouring the soap. Tell me if you feel like it stays a little bit better when you pour the hot soap onto it. I feel like it embeds it a little bit better, but like almost embeds the mica into the soap a little further. I could be wrong. Okay, on these, you may have noticed when I listed the colors in the beginning, again, I don't like to just read what the text is. I'm putting the text up there for references for you, so you can see, what I'm using if you really like a certain color. That really isn't the focus of these, but I tried to add as much as I could, as much info as I could on these anyway. It's more about the technique, but you may have noticed I put Flirt and Voodoo for the reddish pinkish color in there. And that is because of this reason right here. When I pulled out the ones that I just added Flirt to, it didn't show up as well. And it's a great mica. I use it all the time, but it's a little more transparent than some. And I find that the colors that tend to have purples and pinks kind of together, purplish pink or pinkish purple in them, tend to be a little bit transparent. So I just took a little bit of Voodoo, which is another Mad Mica color, and just put a little bit on top to round out that. So it covered the black a little bit better. Oh yeah, here it is. I real quick point away from the micas now to the soap I'm using. If you can use whatever soap you want, whatever clear soap you want, but in my opinion, and I'm not being paid to say this, if you don't use the premium crystal clear by Crafter's Choice, you're not going to get the clarity. That's just my opinion on it. Yes, I did fragrance this. I meant to show that on the screen, but I kind of skated by it because I had my fragrance behind me instead of in front of me, so I just did it over there, and it was a bad idea. I should have shown you on camera. I add very small amounts, but it's still enough to fragrance the soap, and I shove it in there. As I'm doing that, there's a reason I kind of start the front of the mermaid tail in the middle and scoop it in. It's going to sound silly, but I think you'll see in the end it's kind of cool. I'm trying to capture air bubbles with this one. They catch. I did it the first time I did it on accident, but they will catch on the little scales of the mermaid tail, and it really gives it a cool look like it's underwater. And I liked it so much I tried to figure out how to do it on purpose. So you may have noticed I pour these soaps a little bit hotter than you would expect with embeds, but these are fairly sturdy shapes. If I were pouring the little spider, something like that, you have to be a lot more careful. Those little legs will melt so easily. But also I think I said this in the last one, I allow my embeds to dry a little bit, cure almost. They're releasing moisture. I spritz them with alcohol. I leave them set out but covered for a while, and I do believe that helps them not melt as much. And it's just a couple of degrees over the melting point. This blue that I'm pouring is quite a bit above. I think I did it around 131, something like that, because it needs to stick to the clear layer behind it, which I did add a little glitter to while it was setting up, but not much. And I jumped. I mean, I'm fording through this. You don't want to watch the soap dry. I let the clear layer set up completely before I added that blue. That's why I can pour it that hot without any worry that it's going to melt anything that's going to change the color or the design of the soap, but the layer will adhere. And it won't be breaking through anything because it's set up. So this is the final result of this particular type of mermaid that I do. I call this one Mermaid Reflections. It's one of my favorite soaps. It's a pretty popular one because it's just kind of an average soap size. It's easier to use for kids. This is the one I like to promote more for kids. A lot of people like the ones with the tail sticking out. I call it Mermaid Splash because it is really super cute. But it's just harder to use and harder to ship. And so I do prefer these for making for kids. Also, they're just a little easier. But in fact, I haven't replenished my Mermaid Splash in a very long time just because I didn't want to. But these are gorgeous, and the 3D, because the mermaid tail is toward the front, like I plunge it in there, and then you saw I took that stick and just pushed it down a little. If your soap isn't too hot, it's going to stay there pretty much. You might have to jiggle it a little bit or adjust it a tiny bit, which you want to do right at the beginning of putting it in there. And I make sure that flat top is flush against the top of the mold. But if you give that little bit of clear layer behind it and you're keeping the tail to the front, when you pour that back layer, it really gives it a great 3D look to the soap. It looks like that tail's just going to jump right out. So that's one of the reasons I do it the way I do. I have many embedded soaps where I don't put them as close to the front, but these I did. Okay, here we have some designs. These are these specific soaps right here. And those little crackly things you see on the back is because I put quite a bit of mica and poured it hot, so it will make little ripply effects in the back. Here is the rainbow soap on a white background. So that soap was white at the back. I really hope you learned something from this. I do have, those are wrapped, so they look weird, but just letting you know. Here's the Mermaid Splash. Please, if you have questions, ask in the comments, or you know where to find me, and you're welcome to message me if you are in any of the soap groups with me on Facebook. I thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. Bye.